and you're not afraid to choose alternatives. That's why you bet with QuinnBet. Build your own unique football bets with Create a Bet. Winning team, first goal scorer, number of goals, the possibilities are endless. And with a 4-star Trustpilot customer service rating, why not give QuinnBet a shot? QuinnBet, we bet you love it.
Welcome to the Irish NFL Show in association with our partner QuinnBet. We're less than 24 hours removed from the conclusion of the first round of the 2025 draft in Green Bay. And now that we've had a little bit of time to reflect before what actually looks like a very intriguing second round now, and we're going to get into some of the bigger talking points with the dust having settled by this stage. If you want to get into the round one in detail, of course, you can watch or listen back to our draft show. We went live this morning from 1 a.m. Thanks to all of you who joined us. Over 1,000 people tuning in at some points of the broadcast last night. It's not even last night, it's this morning actually, from Buskers on the Ball in Temple Bar. You can check that out on our social channels or on IrishNFLshow.com, or you can listen back to the podcast. Now joining me, Conor Brophy, are Brian O'Leary and Shane Brennan, both still in the hurt locker after broadcasting through the night, and we salute your efforts, gentlemen. Kieran Boyle made a delightful cameo as well, of course, but he's cheating because he's on Jacksonville time. That's why he looks as handsome as ever on the live show. Why are you laughing at that, Brian? I'm just speaking the truth here. Speaking the truth.
Look, we didn't do it last year.
Appreciate
I know we're going to take away too much from obviously what we need to discuss. We didn't do it last year, and I'm delighted we did bring Kieran in because it was perfect. It was actually really good. And look, this is Kieran's bread and butter, more so than us. You know, the college game over the course of the season. So it's like Christmas Day for some people. I'm sure it played out in a bizarre manner last night. None of it went to form, as they say. There was a lot of surprising moves.
Yeah, and that's what made it the draft that it was. I think I was jealous watching it, I have to say. And sorry I couldn't be there with you early this morning, winging my way back just in time for the reaction show. But really felt like I missed out because last year, of course, the first 7 picks until we got to Michael Penix, and that threw a little bit of a spanner in the works. But it all went horribly to plan because you want the jingle, trades. All of that was happening from pick 2 this morning, of course. But let's get into some of the detail here. As I say, now that we've had a little bit of chance to reflect and people have kind of mouthed off, foremost among them, of course, the Sanders. And this is one of the talking points that I wanted to get into because it reflects what's going to happen in the second round, or maybe it's not even going to be the second round. And Kieran, boy, let's give you your props here. You were calling this from very early on when a lot of people still had Shedeur Sanders going very, very early on in the first round, and whether it was a toss-up between him and Cam Ward. And as you were saying, Brian, it was you, Shane, that Cam Ward wasn't even the lock at number 1 until relatively close to the draft. There was nothing comparable to last year when we knew Caleb Williams from before the college football season even came to an end was going to go at 1. But Kieran, you were saying Shedeur Sanders is going to talk himself out of the first round altogether, and if he doesn't, Deion Sanders will. And nothing that they said in response to him not getting off the board in the first round, I don't think will have given any succor to any general managers who made up their mind that this was not the guy that they wanted to expend the first round draft pick on. And I will, before I stop talking here, say one more thing that was really striking to me. When Will Campbell, the offensive or offensive lineman, could be a tackle, could be a guard, of course, depending on where the Patriots want to play him. He came off the board, and Jamie Erdahl was asking him on the stage, you know, what's your attitude to protecting Drake May? He said, I'm going to fight and die to protect Drake May. And he burst into tears, you know, and you have Shedeur Sanders giving out about how, well, this isn't the way it was supposed to go, and this isn't what should have happened, and we all know that. I mean, that just looks so entitled next to some of the guys who looked like they would literally run through a wall to get on a roster last night.
Yeah, I mean, there's many instances of the Deion factor in this whole story. I might have brought this up in the past. Week 2 last year, Colorado played Nebraska, and in the post game, Shedeur basically threw his entire O-line under the bus and said, you know, I couldn't get anything done. You got to ask those guys because they didn't block for me. Now, that's, as you saw, the counterpoint is Will Campbell and his respect for the position. When GMs and head coaches hear that, no matter where it is or what context it is, there's a barrier coming down. And that's just one part of the story, I think, with Sanders. And then it turned out in the course of the season, he ends up getting them cars and watches and basically trying to paper over the effect of what happened and kind of ingratiate himself towards GMs. But it's death by 1,000 cuts, in my opinion. You can start anywhere from his arm strength to his leadership abilities, His win-loss record, only 13-12 at Colorado over 2 seasons. Daddy ball is a phenomenon. I'm sure it is over there, but it's a huge phenomenon over here, and it's frowned upon really badly. Coaches who kind of favor their son in all positions, they give that. I mean, I'm sure it's the same over there in GAA and football and all that stuff. And that's what GMs see. They see Dion pontificating about how great his kids are and how his son is this and how his son is that. Now, Shedeur is a phenomenally talented player, but the intangibles, it's not just him. You're taking Dion and you're taking the mouthpieces. And I said it last week. When Shedeur plays, Dion will talk. He'll talk about the head coach. He'll talk about the GM. He'll talk about the O-line. He'll talk about everybody else, but he won't talk about Shedeur and his play. So I think GMs ran away from that, and I think they were very comfortable in doing that. And the real story is going to be what happens tonight. Is he going to slip to the third round? Because that is, I said earlier a week or two ago that there could be books written about this whole process and about how badly people got it wrong, whether it be pundits or fans or whoever it is in whatever outlet got it so wrong when GMs knew all along that this wasn't going to be the guy for them. Now, I don't think there's any doubt he's not going to go at some stage tonight. I can't see him dropping further than round 3. So I think this is where the Sanders rehabilitation starts. I think there'll be some humility entering the context. You may hear less of Dion for a short period of time. Some of that humble pie might be eaten, but God, it's a bad look. Excuse me. It's a bad look for a player who was not only a couple months ago projected to be the number 1 pick.
Brian, I wanted to talk to you about obviously the Giants trade, because we were talking about misinformation. The Giants played a great game of looking like they were going for Sanders when clearly they had no intention whatsoever. We know they were still knocking on the door and trying to make a move if they could, up to 1 to take Cam Ward. But if he wasn't their guy, they traded back into the first round to get Jackson Dart after taking Abdul Carter, as you and many other people said that they would. Best available player at number 3. Best defensive player in the draft, according to a lot of people, and a real difference maker as an edge rusher who we know can do a job, or we very much suspect can do a job along that New York front next year. Did they have to trade back in to get Dart, though? I'm still wondering what they saw coming behind them that they felt that they had to make that move. Did they think the Browns were going to take him? Because of the teams behind the Giants before they get to pick again, seemed to me that was the only possible scenario that would have made them make that trade.
And I'll throw one in there very quickly on that, Connor, which is the Rams. The Rams were selecting the team after the Texans, and the speculation over the course of the last few days and even today was that the Rams were very keen. And it's been touted for a while that they were looking for a player to come in.
You think that's why the Rams then traded back with the
absolutely, yeah.
With the Falcons?
I think, yeah, and we were only digesting the news of the Dart selection, and all of a sudden, boom, the Falcons are on the clock. We can probably talk about that trade in terms of the value and what was given away on that, which I thought was a bit extreme, bearing in mind the player that was selected. But yeah, I kind of got the sense, and we're never going to know, but obviously the Giants felt that the Rams are coming for him, and this is their utmost opportunity to get up and get him. And in terms of the trade, actually something that I said on the show last night, I said to Shane, I'm very comfortable with the move because give away the first pick in the third round tonight. They gave away the last pick in the third round, and they gave away a third pick next year. Like, there's not much value in that, with all due respect. So that third pick tonight, the additional pick, was a comp pick for the McKinney move off to the Packers last year. So like, it was always like a bonus pick anyway. So it didn't feel like it was a rich move, and they've got a quarterback, and now obviously the conversations back and forth over the course of it. The Giants, as much as Joe Shane has had a difficult time, I think this offseason, they played it very well. They've been very tight with the information coming out. Everybody was still, even at the third pick, were unsure, even though by and large everyone knew. So overall, I don't think Giants fans can complain coming out of last night. But that trade with the Rams and the Falcons coming in, only having 5 picks in the draft and doing that move, giving away a first next year, I thought it was very, very rich.
Shane, one of the things we were keen to talk about, and I'll throw this one to you, is the best picks of the night, given positional need for the team's picking, and also given the player who was picked. I'll throw a couple out as thought starters. I thought Hunter to the Jags was a great pick. I can see that working out very well for both sides. I thought Matthew Golden to Green Bay, massive reception obviously in the room on the night. They really played the crowd well. If you were going to take a receiver in the first round for the first time since 2002, when the draft is in your hometown, it was a pretty good time to do it. Tyler Warren to Indianapolis. They looked like they were hungry for a tight end. There's a ready-made slot for him in that offense, I would have said, and that could be really exciting. Is it one of them for you, or can you throw another one into the mix?
I definitely think the two tight ends that went in the first round, I think, landed in situations that suit them, but also that the teams really wanted to have tight ends. We talk about, and also you'll know better than I will in terms of Colson Loveland going from Michigan to the Chicago Bears. Interesting one there that the Bears went for Loveland over Tyler Warren, considering when most of us are looking at that. And I know, again, we were saying one is 1A, one is 1B. Interesting that they made that decision. And then, of course, like you say, the fact that the Colts managed to get the tight end that they wanted, I think they will come away really happy with that. Sorry, Connor, you're looking about to go in and say something?
No, I was just going to say that the Loveland pick I thought was very, very interesting because Jeff King, the Chicago Bears director of personnel, player personnel, clearly had his talking points ready. So it seems like they were sold on Loveland from a long time back in the process. He obviously, because they could have chosen both, he must have been the one that they ranked ahead of Warren. But he spoke very warmly of Warren. It was literally, it seems to me, just because of the role they want played in Ben Johnson's offense. Ben Johnson clearly sees Loveland as Sam Laporta Mark II and has a job marked out for him. And maybe it's Warren's versatility in that instance counted against him. Whereas I think Shane Steichen will do very fun things with him in Indy. I think that's probably one that's worked out for both of them. Kieran Boyle, one thing I was interested in hearing your view on is what surprised you in terms of what teams didn't do. So one of the ones, for instance, that jumped out to me, I'll throw two in here as conversation starters. Even though, Ted McMillan, might be fun for Bryce Young, and it's good for Bryce Young to have extra targets in Carolina because he hasn't a huge amount of people to throw the ball to. Their defense was a shambles. It was historically bad last year, and they had their pick of a lot of really good defensive players if they want. And we can talk about some of the ones that even are available going into the second round because, we didn't see a defensive player picked unless you kind of asterisk beside Travis Hunter. We didn't see one picked in the top 10, I don't think. Did we? We see one in the top 10 last night. I think 11 was the first. Michael Williams was the first defensive player off the board, was he? Unless I'm wrong. That was one that I thought, oh, that's surprising. And the other one, of course, was Steelers going for defensive tackle when everybody thought they'd go quarterback.
Yeah, I think the Carolina one was an interesting one. I did think they were going to go edge because again we talked about their needs on defense, and I thought that was the move. Not a great defense. I mean, you got J.C. Horn, you got Jadeveon Clowney, and a couple other kind of makeup players. So I'm surprised they didn't go defense, whether it was tackle or edge. But best player available, Ted McMillan, the tallest wide receiver out there with the best hands, the highest reach. Maybe that's a kind of a complementary player for Xavier Legette. Maybe that's where they're focusing on it, and they're going to kind of shore up the defensive parts in the rest of the draft, and maybe pick up a few other players as the season or as the off season goes on. But I was surprised about that. I was also surprised that the Cowboys didn't make a bigger splash on an offensive player. I know you think of the Cowboys from the last probably 10, 15 years, and you just see those 5 gigantic human beings in the front line. And I think they've kind of got away from that the last couple of years, but picking up Tyler Booker, surprising move for maybe casual fans, probably not for diehard Cowboy fans or even Cowboys themselves. I thought they were going to go for one of either the tight end because Warren was still out there. I know Genty was gone early, but a couple of running backs in there.
They still could have had a run at Matthew Golden. He was there.
Yeah. And we talked about how Jerry loves that kind of, the CeeDee Lamb kind of, flash player and someone who can excite the fans and put butts in seats. And while Booker's a great player, great guard, he's not exactly a shimmering light in the galaxy. So I was surprised the Cowboys went that way. But then again, if you think about how the Cowboys built their kind of legacy in the 90s, it was gigantic 300-pound plus guys on each side of the quarterback. So, but yeah, other than that, there wasn't a huge amount of kind of things that surprised me overly. Again, a lot of edges that we knew were going to go in the first round kind of went to places we thought they might. I'm probably most surprised, and I was on with the guys when it happened, was Kelvin Banks going to the Saints. I thought they were going to go for a bigger splash move. I thought prime Mickey Loomis was gonna reappear and keep us all entertained. But that's probably it. The rest kind of went chalk and the positions of note. And it's interesting to see what the Eagles and the Chiefs did towards the back. And I mean, the Eagles just lock, stock, and 2 smoking barrels just recharging again. It's just frightening to see what they're going to be like again with Campbell.
And one thing I meant to ask you about right at the start, Kieran, before we jump to Brian here is, now that you've had a few hours to listen to talk radio and to chat to a few folks around Jacksonville, what's the reaction to the Travis Hunter move? It seems to have been universally lauded as the right thing to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Huge excitement for it. I mean, there was excitement for BTJ last year, but nothing on the scale of Hunter. I mean, I think it was the surprise factor. Nobody saw it coming, and once people saw that there was a trade made, that they pretty much knew that's what it was. And like I've been saying the last couple of weeks, this is a big season for the Jags. I mean, you've got to make a statement. This is a very, very winnable division. Houston I don't want to say they're on a downslide, but they may have peaked the last couple of years. The Colts are your classic 8-8, 8-9 team, and the Colt are the who am I missing? The Houston Colts and who's the fourth team in the South? Titans. There you go. The Titans are perennially underachievers. So this is I mean, Jags this is a time for them to ball out and just go out there and try to win this division. There's still a lot of questions about the O-line. The D-line has got to figure some stuff out between Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker. But you make that move, excites the fans. Listen, I've been at Jags games in November, December when it's still 85, 90 degrees, but there's about 30,000 people in there because it's another losing season and there's nothing to be excited about. And you've got a third string quarterback out there slinging it to Parker Washington. So they need it. They need something. They need a spark. They need energy. They need someone who's going to put butts in seats and excite the area. And that's definitely what Travis Hunter did. I mean, I saw there was a clip of him showing up at the practice facility earlier on, and they just rolled the red carpet out for him. There's already a gigantic 40-foot framed picture of Travis Hunter from his Colorado days in the lobby. So they've already done their work on that. So he's going to be a huge factor in the area. And it's just a pick that I think, the Jags, this is the 31st year of the Jags. They've been waiting for after the Pacelli pick in 95, they've been waiting for a really, somebody they can really rally behind. So it's a huge pick for the city, a huge pick for the team. So yeah, it's a lot of excitement today in the area.
Cool. Brian, Kieran just touched on it briefly there, but I'm very interested in your view on, I mean, if you were looking at the absolute cookie cutter Philadelphia Eagles, Baltimore Ravens picks, like what do these teams do? They wait for good defensive players to fall down the board and pick them up on the cheap. The Eagles get Jihad Campbell. Injury crashes over him, but this is the perfect landing spot for him, surely. And it's a smart move by the Eagles because they can afford to take a bit of a risk. They have resources there. They can wait and see if he gets fit. They don't have to rush him into service. He's not there to quench a fire, but he is there to be unleashed as an impact player if and when they need him. And Malachi Starks for the Ravens as well, probably the top-rated safety in the draft, just slips down the board and falls into the waiting arms of the team that picks players in the secondary for fun, that just seems to be able to stockpile these greats.
Yeah, I text Connor Rogers today because we were having a bit of back and forth crack over the fact that we were talking about Jihad Campbell on the podcast on Monday, in which we referred to where the ceiling, and his ceiling for him was 19 to the Bucks, because he said any other season without the injury concerns, he's a top 10 pick immediately. I know you kind of tongue in cheek put him in your mock draft in the top 10. So for him to land at the Eagles, I said, this is playing into the Eagles' hands yet again, a fantastic player that will be sitting here probably at the back end of next season wondering why he went so far down the list. But again, it's perfect for him because of the injury concerns he's had. It's perfect for the Eagles that he could be that developmental type of player that they can bring and ease into the defense over the course of the season. In terms of Starks, I read an article yesterday morning which brought me to QuinnBet because I found a way to navigate a nice price out of QuinnBet for Starks to be selected by the Ravens, because they were yesterday morning saying this is the player for them. It was openly out there with all their beat writers that they were after him, but they didn't genuinely believe he would fall into their lap, and yet again he did. That was actually one of the quickest ones as well, Connor, last night. I know that this 10-minute window, which Goodell today is talking about potentially reducing to 7 minutes, but it's nice when you see the selection go in very quickly. And last night the Ravens one went in very quickly because that was the player that earmarked, didn't believe he'd fall. They just complement already strong defense for next season. They're going to be even bigger and better on defense. It'll be interesting to see if they can be stopped.
I feel like that was also a kind of a low-key flex from the Ravens as well. Like, that's exactly what we expected. Just turn in the card real quick. Like, none of your messing around. Like, this is playing. We're playing chess, and the rest of y'all are playing checkers. I love how they do their business. In fairness to them, Shane, I wanted to start looking at the second round here because, as we were saying, because of what happened or didn't happen in the first round, there's a lot of good players available at the top of the board. Like, a lot of the oxygen is being burned up by, as we burned some earlier up ourselves, the Will Shedeur, or will he not be picked in the second round even, and how early or late will he go in that round if he does? But looking through the players that are still on the board, you got the likes of Jalen Milroe, quarterback from Alabama, who may or may not fit into some schemes and could excite some coaches around the league and some GMs around the league. You got Will Johnson, the highly rated Michigan cornerback; he's still available. Nick Amenwori, the safety from South Carolina, another defensive back that there was huge hype around. Donovan Eziro-Aku, the edge from Boston College. And there seems to be some value in the running back market as well. There's a couple of quite highly rated running backs who didn't get drafted at all in the first round. Indeed, we saw Ashton Jeanty, of course, go as one of the highest running back picks we've seen since Saquon Barkley. But there is value at the top of the second round, and a couple of teams, the Browns and the Bears among them, have two very early selections, two top 10 picks in that round.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the Browns in that, because it's just in the last question you talked about what you think was the sort of best pick or greatest value picker. Then I definitely think that the Browns picking Mason Graham at 5 overall and getting the value from the trade, because they're now going to the second draft picking at 30. Sorry, second round of the draft picking at 33.
I'm glad you said that, because that seemed to me to be one of those rare trades that actually looked like the right move for both teams. It was a smart move by the Browns and a smart move by the Jags.
Absolutely, because, and I'll get back onto the second round in a second, but if you actually think of what both teams need there, because I think as Kieran alluded to there, the Jags needed an injection bit of star power in order to try and turn the tide in a very winnable division, which is the AFC South. What the Browns need is the Browns need long-term thinking and to properly build out a team to try and, in the long term, compete in a very tough division in the AFC North. And getting Mason Graham in, as I said last night, he's a player who I'm a big fan of. I think he's a very tenacious frontline defender, plus two top picks in the second round here and a first rounder next year from that trade. I think the Browns are in a very good position, and it's interesting now. It's funny, we talk so much about whether the Browns might find a way to nab a quarterback here. I think they're picking at, like I said, 33 and 36. I think there's a very good chance they might actually go running back here as opposed to quarterback. We look at Trayvon Henderson and the season he had at Ohio State last year.
The other thing they might do, of course, is that they're well positioned to take a swing at a quarterback next year.
Absolutely, and it gives you more options in terms of the talent which is available here. Like you said, Will Johnson, cornerback from Michigan, even Elijah Arroyo, if they wanted to have a tight end option from Miami, and there's plenty of guys going out there. But like you said, I definitely think you look at the running backs available. You look at Trayvon Henderson, like I said, out of and Quinshon Judkins, both out of Ohio State. I imagine these guys are going to go at some point tonight between the second and third rounds. Caleb Johnson out of Iowa as well. There is definitely, and Kieran will probably notice there's names further down the list which we may not have heard so much that I think will turn out to be really good value that can be gotten tonight. And I think the teams who are in a position with good draft capital in the second round might actually be able to get more out of this draft than even what they get in the first round. And the Browns, more than anybody else, is in a fantastic position to really build into the future for that.
Brian, for the teams that are looking for the quarterback of the future but don't necessarily need Mr. Right now, Rams would be in that bucket, of course, as would a couple of other teams. There are actually plenty of projects on the board, but they are projects at this stage. Whether it's Jalen Milroe, whether Doc is another name that's, some people are quite hot on, some people don't really rate at all. Will Howard from Ohio State is another one. Like there's options here.
Yeah, and I wonder, are the options more beneficial and sparing them of the circus, as Kieran rightly alluded to earlier on with the Deion Sanders factor and even everything that comes with Shedeur? Because we're into a situation where it's a second round. Realistically, whoever comes in, maybe with the exception of the Browns, who obviously have Pickett and Flacco, maybe one of them comes in as lights out in camp and gets the opportunity to start, similar to Will Levis a couple of years ago. But you wonder now, is Jalen Milroe going to be the next quarterback off the board? You've got the Saints lurking, you've got the Raiders lurking. For me, he kind of has similarities to Geno Smith, and you wonder with Pete Carroll, obviously he's at the latter years of his coaching career, but you'd wonder, are they looking at him as a familiar type of player?
Somebody made the point, I think it might have been Patrick Claybon, and apologies if I'm misattributing it, that Pete Carroll loves a good bit of quarterback competition. He likes competition in that room. They drafted Russell Wilson when they already had two quarterbacks in Seattle, and they created a contest for the job that worked out very well for all parties.
Yeah, and a lot of people think Jalen Milroe, in the longevity of this draft, may be the best quarterback because he's got the biggest upside. But right now, he's probably a year or two away from being a proper starting, functioning quarterback in the league. So maybe the likes of the Raiders can ease him in with a Geno Smith contract there for 2 or 3 years, or the Saints maybe a little bit more precarious because of the Derek Carr situation. mean, you wouldn't want him going to the Browns with their situation at quarterback because there's not enough there. Who's going to develop him? Joe Flacco never seems to be very keen to put his arm around these quarterbacks. Yeah, and a few others as you mentioned there. So we'll be interested to see the go. I'm not entirely sure we're going to see a run on quarterbacks tonight. Maybe Kieran will correct me if that's the case, but I could see a quick start on other positions of need, and then maybe the quarterbacks gradually will transition into the latter stages of the second round.
Kieran, handing the torch to you then. Give us a couple of names here. Who should we be watching out for, and where's the value to be had in the second round?
Well, I mean, other than the obvious, Shedeur is going to go somewhere in the second or third. Keep an eye out for Riley Leonard, the Notre Dame quarterback. He's still got to go somewhere. Who else we got? Jack Beck, and then you got Mason Taylor, son of Jason Taylor. Cam Scadaboo, don't forget about him. Luther Burden, the wide receiver. I think
Cam Scadaboo is an interesting one. Talk to me about running backs, because there are a couple on the board, and there's a few teams. Chicago was one that we thought might trade up for Genty. Marion Hampton has gone off the board, of course, as well. But there are a couple of decent-looking second-round take a punt running backs out there.
Yeah, Judkins, Travion Henderson, definitely Scadaboo. I mean, he's an excitable player. He'll definitely compete for a starting position. Just going back to the quarterbacks, I think Milroe is going to go fairly early in the second round. I think he was somebody who was touted kind of late first round. And I do like, like Brian said, I do like the fact that the Giants did make that pick, because you got to strike while the iron's hot. So I'm fully on board with that one. But I think Milroe is going to go early in the second round. I do like that. But other players, again, Will Johnson, he'll go pretty soon as well. He's just too good of a player to stay off the board. Mike Green as well, the edge out of Marshall. There's so many players that we've watched over the course of last season, the season before, that you may not have remembered. Be like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. Like Riley Leonard, we completely forgot about, but he's going to go somewhere tonight. I'm fairly sure about that. And even someone like Arante Ursary, the tackle who we talked about in our pre-draft. He wasn't a factor yesterday. But Luther Burden, Jaden Higgins, wide receivers like that. Now that the premier wide receivers, the top quarterbacks, again, not a deep quarterback class. The quarterbacks will be very, Tyler Shock. They're going to be few and far between in the remaining rounds. So now you're going to start looking at, the running backs, the wide receivers, all the top edges are gone. So now you're looking at the kind of filling positions. A couple of cornerbacks unproven. They'll be picked up in the lower rounds. So there's a lot. Elijah Arroyo, the tight end from Miami, Restrepo, the wide receiver, helped Cam Ward out a lot. So there's a lot of really good, talented players that are going to find a team tonight, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be as much. This is as much fun as Thursday night is for me. I think it's the fact that it's a faster pace and you get 2 rounds knocked out. I think it's this phenomenal talent that goes in these rounds too. So keep an eye out for some of these running backs and these wide receivers, but definitely Riley Leonard and Cam Scadaboo.
Yeah, I gotta say, you took the words right out of my mouth. The way it's lined up this year, the second and third rounds could be really, really interesting. And there's going to be a lot of good players coming fast off the board in round 2. We'll keep a very close eye on it. I'm sure you guys will too. Thanks again for joining us on the Irish NFL Show.